Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. Sweet may the fiddle sound, the banjo play, the old walk down. Dancers swing round and round when I'm far away. Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. Hello, I am John McCutcheon, and I am proud to be invited to be a part of the American Democracy 2020 project presented by the Greensboro Historical Society and presented by my friends at the Greensboro Public Library Foundation. We're in a momentous year, not only because of all the strange COVID stuff that has made us all as one grind to a halt and have events like this rather than in person, but we also have a presidential election. It is also the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, the 100th anniversary of a woman's right to vote, and the 60th anniversary of the Greensboro sit-ins, all three of which changed American democracy in substantive ways. So this year we are exploring those things not only in our past but in our present, leaning into our future that are shaping and reshaping our democracy. Music has certainly been one of those things, and no one in my life has been more influential than my friend and my mentor Pete Seeger, who passed away in early 2014 after over 9 decades of a great and glorious life. I want to explore with you some this evening his influence on an entire generation of Americans, whether they knew it or not. And I decided to start with this song, which is so emblematic of Pete's music. He took a traditional melody and a traditional form, wrote new words, words of hope, hoping that the world will be well when we are gone. He wrote this song in 1973, which was about the time Pete and I first met, and about the time he took me, along with many other young performers, under his wing so that he could be assured the work would continue when he was far away. Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. And it would seem not only strange but wrong in any celebration of Pete Seeger not to have people singing along. So please don't be shy, don't be embarrassed. He wrote songs for many voices, including yours. And sweet may the breezes blow, clear may the streams flow, blue above and green below when I'm far away. Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. And swift may the skiers turn, swimmers churn, lovers burn. Peace may the nations learn when I'm far away. Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. Well, may the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. Well, I want to start off by telling you about my first encounter with Pete Seeger. I was 11 years old, and I had achieved my life's dream. I was the starting catcher for my town's Little League All-Star team. It's all been kind of downhill since then. It was an August afternoon, I remember, and I had to get down to practice. Now, we lived out in the country, and those of you all who grew up in rural areas know that every 11-year-old knows how to drive. I mean, they know how to drive a pickup truck, they know how to drive a tractor, but not many 11-year-olds are driving themselves across town to Little League practice. No, for that I needed my mom, and I could not find her. We didn't have a very big house, and I checked every possible room I thought she would be in, only to find her in the last place. The most misnamed room in our house, the family room. A room so impossibly small, all 11 of us could never have fit in there at one time. And she was sitting there on our tired little sofa, doing the most unexpected, most unmotherly thing. She was watching television on a Tuesday afternoon. I mean, who even knew television was on in the afternoon? Not me. And I did my best imitation of an 11-year-old hissy fit. I had worked myself up into what my grandmother used to call a state of high fuss. And I said, "Come on, Mom, we're gonna go. I'm gonna be late. We gotta go." And without ever taking her eyes off that little 12-inch Zenith, she just patted the sofa next to her and said, "Sit down here and watch this with me." And I remember thinking, all right, who are you and what have you done with my mother? It was the only time before or since that my mother has ever invited me to watch television. So I was curious. So I sat down, and what my mother was watching on this Tuesday afternoon of my 11th summer was the March on Washington. The I Have a Dream speech, March on Washington. The first thing in our nation's history that was broadcast live on all 3 channels. Yes, you young people heard me correctly. All 3 channels. And just, if you wanted to change from one of those channels to the other, you had to get up out of your chair and walk across the room through the snow, barefoot. This thing my mother was watching was amazing. Well, first of all, they claim there are over 200,000 people on the National Mall. We know now it's really impossible to tell how many people are on the National Mall. And there was preaching like I had never heard in our church on Sunday. And then there was the music. Oh my goodness. Began with Marian Anderson singing the national anthem. And then came Mahalia Jackson. And for a little white kid from a rural community here, Mahalia Jackson for the first time. Now that was a religious experience. And then out came what my mother told me were folk singers. I had never heard folk music. I didn't know what a folk singer was. But there was Odetta, and then there was this beautiful young woman with dark skin, straight black hair, and a high crystalline voice. It was beautiful when she sang. And then out came this little curly-headed guy with this instrument of torture around his neck that I come to understand held a harmonica. And I remember watching him that day, and when I heard him sing, I realized I could be a professional singer. And then out came this trio, 2 guys and a girl, and the guys had goatees, which I've always thought looked sinister. But they had this nice Nordic-looking girl with them, so I figured they're okay. And they sang a song by the little curly-headed guy, and it was just question after question after question. And then after all the questions, then they sang, "The ants are my friends." And I looked at my mom and I said, "The ants are my friends?" And she just shrugged. And I remember thinking that I was going to have to get to know about this folk music business, because it's obviously better than it sounds. And then they sang a second song. And to my recollection, they were the only group to sing two. And it's not so much the song that I remember. What I remember was as the TV cameras panned the crowd, everybody was singing. I mean, young and old and black and white, the people up in the dais who never sing, they were singing. And suddenly I realized my mom was singing. And I remember looking up at her and thinking, okay, who are you really? If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out the love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a bell, I would ring it in the morning, ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out warning, I'd ring out the love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a song, I would sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out warning, I'd sing out the love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. I got a hammer, I got a bell, I got a song to sing all over this land. It's the hammer of justice, and it's the bell of freedom, song about the love between brothers and my sisters, all over this land. The hammer of justice, and it's the bell of freedom, song about the love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. And that was my first contact with Pete Seeger via one of his songs. That's right. He wrote, along with his Weaver's bandmate Lee Hayes, "If I Had a Hammer." I'll bet most of you, maybe even all of you, had no idea that that was not a traditional song. Certainly used traditional forms, and it's certainly been adopted by our culture as though it has always belonged to us, just like a folk song. And that was Pete's brilliance. And I can tell you as a songwriter, it's no easy task to write a song that sounds as though it has already stood the test of time. And this wasn't the only one. He wrote, "Where Have All the Flowers Gone?" Probably his biggest hit was "Turn, Turn, Turn, to Everything There Is a Season." Of course, he co-wrote that one too, with God. You could do worse. I was at his house once and I said, "Hey, Pete, how'd you handle the royalties on that one?" And he said, "Well, you know, John, I only wrote the last 6 words of that song. All the rest was just organizing the book of Ecclesiastes." But all those songs that are iconic in our cultural vocabulary, Pete never had a number one song with them. Nope, they were all hits for somebody else. Oh, back when he was with the Weavers, probably the biggest folk group ever, Goodnight Irene was the number one song for 13 weeks in a row. Had never happened before. Didn't happen again for decades. But as a solo artist, nope, never once had a number one song. In fact, he was only on the hit parade one time. And that was, ironically, with a song he didn't even write. No, it was written by a self-described Berkeley housewife by the name of Malvina Reynolds. And the song was Little Boxes. And this is not that song. No, I'm going to stick my neck out and declare that this is my favorite Malvina Reynolds song. I learned it from Pete. It was the title cut of an album that he put out in the mid to late 60s. That was his first album that was comprised entirely of environmentally themed songs. A movement that would occupy the balance of his life. And because of its position as the title cut of that album, oh, I thought this was a song about runaway development and about wildness. But after singing it for 50 years, I think I understand that this is a song about resilience, about resistance, and power. God bless the grass that grows through the cracks. They roll the concrete over it and they try to keep it back. But the concrete gets tired. What it has to do, it breaks and it buckles. The grass grows through. God bless the grass. God bless the grass that grows through cement. It's green and it's tender, it's easily bent. After a while, it lifts up its head, for the grass is living, but the stone is dead. God bless the grass. God bless the grass, it's gentle and low. Its roots, they are deep, its will is to grow. It moves through the ground, it reaches for the air. And after a while, it's growing everywhere. God bless the grass. And God bless the truth that fights for the sun. They roll the lies over it and they think that it is won. God bless the truth, the friend of the poor, the wild grass growing at the poor man's door. God bless the grass that grows through the cracks. They roll the concrete over it and they try to keep it back. Concrete gets tired, what it has to do, it breaks and it buckles, the grass grows through. God bless the grass. Everyone in all the world, I reach my hand, I shake their hand. To everyone in all the world, I shake their hand like this. All together, the whole wide world around. I may not know your lingo, But I can say by jingo, no matter where you live, we can shake hands. Everyone in all the world, I reach my hand, I shake their hand. To everyone in all the world, I shake their hand like this. All together, the whole wide world around. I may not know your lingo, but I can say by jingo, no matter where you live, we can shake hands. I believe it was Mark Twain who said that travel is fatal to prejudice, bias, and narrow-mindedness. I've certainly found that to be true in my own life as I travel this world. Pete, of course, traveled the world even more widely and came home armed with lots of music from all other parts of the world. He understood that folk music is the root of all the world's music. And I've certainly found it to be true that it is common in every culture, even in places where you do not and cannot speak the language. People notice something familiar, and we likewise do in theirs. One of the things that Pete did so kind of surreptitiously but beautifully is he put new languages into our mouths. For instance, yo soy un hombre sincero, de donde crece la palma. Yo soy un hombre sincero, de donde crece la palma. Y antes morirme quiero echar mis versos del alma. Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera. Mi verso es bien verde claro y de un carmín encendido. Mi verso es bien verde claro y de un carmín encendido. Mi verso es un ciervo herido que busca el monte en amparo. Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera. Americans singing in Spanish in the 1960s. Incredible. And they sang, and they didn't even know what they were singing. I am a truthful man from the land of the palm trees, and before dying, I wish to share these songs of my soul. My songs are flaming crimson, they are verdant green. My songs are lost fawn in the forest. I learned this song as a teenager, and it put me in very good stead when I married into a Cuban family and knew all the words, such as, with the poor people of this earth, I wish to share my fate. Streams of the mountain, please please me more than the sea. Con los pobres de la tierra quiero yo mi suerte echar. Con los pobres de la tierra quiero yo mi suerte echar. El arroyo de la sierra me complace más que el mar. Guantanamera, Guaida Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guaida Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guaida Guantanamera. The very first of Pete's songs that I ever intentionally learned was this one. It was not one he wrote, but he found it in a songbook from a girls' school from Germany from the 1700s. There's some digging for you. It was also used during World War II as an anti-fascist song in Germany. And Pete was brilliant at bringing out those little pieces of other cultures' history that is not as well known, like the resistance to the Nazis that was in Germany during World War II. I actually learned this to impress my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, my mother's parents who were German. And it's another example of Pete putting new words and new languages into our mouths, and it put me in good stead with Grandpa and Grandma. Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts really flower. Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts give me power. No scholar can map them, no hunter can trap them, no man can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no man can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure. My conscience decrees this right I must treasure. My thoughts do not cater to duke or dictator, no man can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no man can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. And though tyrants take me and throw me in prison, my thoughts will burst free like blossoms in season. Foundations will crumble and structures will tumble and free men will cry. Die Gedanken sind frei and free men will cry. Die Gedanken sind frei. One of the many things I learned from Pete was that at the heart of all civic engagement had to be love. And he loved where he was from and where he lived. And in the mid to late 1960s, he realized that one of the things that he and all his neighbors shared there on the banks of the Hudson River north of New York City, all the things that they might disagree about was that they shared this river that was their front yard. And they shared the dream that their children and their grandchildren could swim and fish and boat in that river. So he began to organize his neighbors, and they built a boat. It was a replica of an old Hudson River sloop, and they called it the Clearwater. And for over 50 years now, it's been plying its way up and down the Hudson, giving kids rides, having pumpkin festivals and strawberry festivals and folk festivals, and in the process, organizing the people who live right there to do what the government could not and would not do: clean up their own backyard. It's not done yet by any stretch of the imagination, but the work got started by a single meeting. And Pete told me, gosh, we knew nothing about building boats. So I decided I was going to start small and build myself a rowboat. And he did. And one night he told me he was out on the Hudson. It was a beautiful, clear night. The stars were out. It was a full moon. And he was overwhelmed, and as frequently happens with such things, he wrote a song. It's one of my favorite songs about of his many love songs to his home. I'm going to follow that up with an instrumental that Pete wrote many, many years ago for the 12-string guitar called Living in the Country. And when I was in college, I faithfully learned it on the 12-string guitar and then learned how to play the hammer dulcimer. Sailing down my golden river, sun and water all my own. But I was not far from home. Sunlight glancing on the water, life and death are all my own. But I was never alone. Exploring all the little byways, sighting all the distant stars, but I was never alone. Life to raise my sons and daughters, golden sparkles in the foam, but I was never alone. Sailing down my golden river, the sun and water all my own. But I was not far from home. Pete held that uniquely democratic notion that people working together can accomplish something that no one of us can do on our own, whether it be cleaning up a river or improving the condition of one's work life. Pete was a lifelong union member. I was proud to call him a union brother, and we appeared many times together to honor working people, their sacrifices, and to celebrate their victories as well. But whether we were playing for a union audience or not, if Pete and I were on the stage together, he insisted this be on the playlist. And it seems appropriate as we have just celebrated Labor Day this week to include this song. Step by step, the longest march can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singling on, and by union what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singling on. Step by step, longest march can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singling on, and by union what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singling on. Oh, I remember the day well. It was July 1st, 1966, the day my youngest brother Robert was born, the ninth of the nine. And I, as the first of the nine, was left in charge of the younger seven while my parents went off to St. Mary's Hospital to do the deed. My father was pacing the waiting room with all the other expectant fathers, as he did back then, chain-smoking Lucky Strikes. Meanwhile, back at home, I was pacing my own path in the carpet in front of the telephone. See, I had seen just enough Western movies to know that women regularly died in childbirth. And I sat that day waiting for that fateful call. Well, as you probably figured out, both mother and child were fine. It was then my turn to be both relieved and joyous. I left my sister Mary Claire in charge of the younger six and schwinned my way down to Wright's Music Store on 3rd Street, downtown our hometown. And armed with my life savings from my paper route, I emerged that day from Wright's carrying the very first LP I would ever buy. I had coveted it for a year because I'd heard the title cut on television, though none of the usual venues that American teenagers heard music on television in the mid-1960s. It had not been on American Bandstand or Shindig or what was that other one? Hullabaloo. And it wasn't on Hootenanny, no. I'd heard it on the news, a place you usually didn't hear songs. At first, At first I thought it was a hymn. Sure sounded like one. But then I realized it couldn't be a hymn because every hymn that I knew, and I knew plenty, had all trafficked in singular pronouns. And this song, We Shall Overcome, was all about the plural. I got home and approached that iconic appliance of the 1960s, the hi-fi, with the aforementioned Zenith 12-inch in the middle, a serviceable AM radio off to the right, longing for the invention of FM. And over on the left was the phonograph, complete with that little cylindrical device that you would fit over the spindle so you could stack up your singles and they'd play one after the other, except it never worked. I remember one night at supper when my kids were in high school, they said, "Dad, what were parties like when you were in high school?" And they said, I said, "Man, they were great. Everybody show up with their 45s. And they said, "You took guns to your parties?" I said, "Yeah, this is America. If it was a really good party, you might need protection." But I didn't need that little cylindrical device that night. No, I had an LP, the very first one. And it fit so perfectly on that spindle and gently went down onto the turntable, and that arm on the right magically came over and found the grooves, the very first cut. And I remember sitting there cross-legged on the carpet in front of the hi-fi, just transfixed. I'd never heard anything like this. Well, first of all, it was a live concert recording. I hadn't known that. And yeah, there was a guy's name on the front of the LP, but I hadn't bought it because of him. I bought it because of the song. And the audience drowned out this guy whose name was on the cover. And they sang in lusty, full-throated harmony. And growing up as a Catholic kid, I had no idea that human beings could sound like that. And I made a vow to myself, if ever I could possibly be a part of that audience, I will travel great distances. 5 years later, I found myself sitting cross-legged on a basketball court at a little college, attending my very first Pete Seeger concert. And I was transported back to that 13-year-old sitting cross-legged on the carpet in front of the hi-fi. I was transfixed. I had never seen or been a part of anything like this. I was surrounded by other kids who, like me, had been told our entire lives we could not sing, who suddenly discovered that we could. We believed we had no power, and we found out that we did. We thought we were all alone, and discovered we were not. A concert as a community building activity? It was unheard of. It was unthinkable. It was unforgettable. And in the many times I had an opportunity over the years to share the stage with Pete, I was always once again that 13-year-old cross-legged on the carpet. I was transfixed. I was never a part of anything like this. And I want to close out with my part of this, singing a song that Pete always included in his concerts toward the end. Prophetic, perhaps, hopeful, certainly. And it is emblematic of Pete's optimism. Just as Woody Guthrie on his guitar had a sign that said, "This machine kills fascists," around the rim of Pete's banjo, he had inscribed, "This machine surrounds hate and forces it to surrender." To everything, turn, turn. is a season. Turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. Do everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. Do everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rent, a time to sow, a time of love, a time of hate, a time of peace. I swear it's not too late. Do everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. A time of peace. I swear it's not too late. I want to thank you all for being a part of this, for joining me this evening. Thanks to my friends at the Greensboro History Museum and the Greensboro Public Library Foundation, who made this American Democracy 2020 program possible. I want to close out this evening with a song that should have been the title of the Seeger collection that I put together had I not used it up on the very first of my 41 recordings. It's a song that exemplifies not only Pete's optimism, his belief in democracy, his belief in us as Americans. And it echoes in my own work as well. Thank you, Pete. You taught me well. You taught us all well. Well may the world go. My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the darkness round me falls, I know the truth, it liveth. What though the tempest round me roars, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, it sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? And when tyrants tremble sick with fear, and hear their death knells ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? In prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging, when friends by shame are undefiled. How can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the real though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, those freedom bells come ringing, since love is Lord of heaven